Hi, my name is Casey. I am interviewing my mom, Sherry, in reference to some philosophy topics. First, we're going to discuss euthanasia and what makes it right or wrong. For this section, we viewed a documentary in my class called The Suicide Tourist, aired on PBS, and this is about a man named Craig Ewert. He was diagnosed with ALS. And so him and his wife traveled to Switzerland to utilize the services of a company called Dignitas. Dignitas is a company where you can pay them to facilitate your euthanasia once you meet their certain criteria. And Ewert stated that he felt he had deteriorated enough and he didn't want to become an empty shell of a body and lose control of decision making and just eating and everything in general. So they set up the euthanasia through Dignitas, where they put him in an apartment and a caretaker picks up the essentially a lethal dosage of sleeping medication and puts him to sleep forever. So do you agree with his thoughts on death and having control of his own life?
Yes, I agree with choosing your own time when you feel like you're ready to die and not have to continue living a life with pain or misery. It's part of your own decision. If you signed a do not resuscitate order, it's along those same lines. You're still making your own choice of whether you want to live or die.
Did something in your past bring you to this conclusion, or is this like a thought passed down from a family member, or?
No, I just had that feeling. I wouldn't want to live in pain, and if I was ready to die, I wouldn't want to have that choice.
Right. So then we can say, I guess you agree that euthanasia should be legal within the United States.
Yes.
Okay. What sort of parameters do you think somebody should have to meet to be put to sleep? It's kind of a gray area.
I guess they have to be sane.
Right.
Couldn't be crazy and make those kind of decisions. I guess be terminally ill.
Yeah.
That would be one.
That was one point that Ewert made in his documentary, was that he can suffer and die, or just die and end it. But okay, and our next topic is about killing versus letting die, and which one of those might you feel is worse. So there's an example that Helga Cuse wrote in her article called Why Killing is Not Always Worse, and it is sometimes better than let die. It was in reference to two uncles that are both in line to receive a large inheritance if their nephew were to pass away. So the Uncle Smith sneaks into a bathroom with the nephew while he's taking a bath and drowns the nephew. Therefore, they receive the inheritance. Or, in contrast, the other Uncle Jones sneaks into the bathroom and happens to see the nephew has slipped and hit his head, and now he is laying in the bathtub water and essentially lets him die that way. So, do you think one is worse than the other, and why?
They actually killed him on purpose. The other one, the guy had an accident. maybe he was already dead
Mhm.
and you just left him there.
Mhm.
They didn't kill him themselves. The guy had an accident.
Helga says in her article that she relates Jones, the one who let the nephew drown, as no more of a threat than a rock or a tree, and a person who is actually prepared to kill you, should be watched. I don't know. My thoughts on it are, yes, they're both terrible people, but one of them is not willing to do the work, or maybe he would have. I was going to say one of them is not willing to do the work, but he wants the reward. I suppose Jones would have to be put in the other scenario. Her second example was of a truck driver who had been involved in a horrible accident, and now he's burning alive. The co-driver was able to escape the fire and has access to a gun, so the first driver is begging and pleading that he shoot him to death, so he doesn't burn to death. The co-driver does shoot his colleague. So was that justified?
Yes, he's putting him out of his misery, because he's going to live a life full of pain anyway, either from the injury itself or being disfigured and not wanting to live.
Yeah, I think that sort of relates back to the euthanasia, is that he's going to suffer and die, or he's just going to die. We also covered an article by Winston Nesbitt called Is Killing No Worse Than Letting Die? This covers the difference thesis, that is simply just the difference between killing and letting die. So his first example was, if a person is put into a river that you know they cannot swim, so they just drowned, or the other scenario is you see a person drowning and you do nothing to save them, even though you're capable of doing something. So her thoughts were that most would agree the first scenario is worse, because you're actually intentionally putting someone in the river to drown. There might be a motive behind it. Nesbitt, the previous author that I mentioned, provided an example of two brothers who were impatiently waiting for their father to die. So one brother intentionally poisons the father's whiskey. The other brother discovers the poison and does not prevent his father from drinking it, and he does not provide a medication that he knows will save his life. So, kind of to circle back again, do you believe that letting someone die is worse than killing them? Especially when there's motive involved, I suppose.
No, because what kind of person's actually going to do the killing? They're worse than somebody who just doesn't prevent it. They've had to think about how to do it, when to do it, plan it all out, versus just sitting there doing nothing.
Right. Let's see. Any specific reason those thoughts were developed in your past, like passed on from a family member or any sort of experience?
No, that's from all the shows that I like to watch about serial killers.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's all we have.